Good afternoon and welcome to an afternoon of poetry. It's March the 13th and I hope you remember to change your clocks, bringing them forward, as well as a good time to change the batteries in your smoke detectors, etc. I'm Carol Latham and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Muzeo Museum and Cultural Center in Anaheim. We are a local museum where people gather to share culture, make art, and lift up our community as we do this through creative events, exhibits, and educational programs, much like this. The city that we know of as Anaheim is on Tongva traditional ancestral territories, and they're still the home to many people of the Tonga Nation, even to this day. And we at the Museo respect and honor the sovereign rights of Indigenous communities. We appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday afternoon to join us for this program, which is being recorded. This afternoon's presentation it really features an amazing poetic voice, Marcus Omari. Let me tell you a little bit about Marcus. He's a dedicated poet, writer, and performer. He was featured poet on Yes, Verses and Flow on TV1. He has authored several poetry chapbooks and contributed poetic vocals for various multi-genres music albums. His interests are amazing and very broad, and he believes in wholehearted wellness. And he is a self-proclaimed Baldwin White. Marcus Omari now lives and teaches in Orange County, California, as part of the Santa Ana United School District. And he is a LitCon Creative Arts Program Director, I think, is the correct terminology for that. And he's a coordinator for the Regional Poetry Out Loud program. His website, www.marcusomari.com. And I'm sure you'll hear that more often again this afternoon. But it is my pleasure to have Marcus Omari. Welcome, Marcus. It's good to have you back.
Good to be here. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see your smiling face. Have yet to meet in person, but we'll get there.
Isn't that funny that we haven't yet? And we've done how many programs together where you've been a part of? Probably this is the third or maybe even the fourth one.
Yeah, we
have yet to meet in person.
Third or fourth.
So, Marcus, I've shared a little bit of your background, but is there anything else that you'd like to add that I haven't mentioned?
About my background?
Yes. Like, how did you develop this passion for writing poetry, and what was the thing that made you decide that this was where your voice was best served?
Great introductory question. It started off, I think in fifth grade. I think I wrote my first poem. It was about a unicorn.
Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, it was about a unicorn. I think it was a good, good 8 to 10 lines, a solid, maybe even 2 stanzas. But I remember it ended with running, running, running with the grace of a swan. Ooh. It's one of those, it's one of those poems that I think my mom still has to this day, tucked away somewhere. And just was a lover of language from a young age. One of those kids that I think on my 13th birthday, I got some money and ran over to the bookstore and bought a thesaurus and a dictionary. I just wanted to know more.
13?
Yeah. I just wanted to know more words. I wanted a broader language base, and I was just big on communication. Dug really deeply into. You remember World Book Encyclopedia or Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yes.
Yeah, my parents had that.
I bet a lot of your students don't even know what you're talking about when you say that.
Yeah, and that's exactly. You got to have parents that know about those when they used to sell encyclopedias and have them in your house. So I was blessed enough to have one of those families and mom and dad that were big into having that those type of resources available. So I spent a lot of time, just looking into different ideas, different animals, different mythologies, and that is what really fed my brain and my imagination, and transition into writing, just developing your own voice. So yeah, from there. And I
I
think
bet
the
you
latter
read
part
a lot too.
did I read? Yeah, I read. I'm laughing now because watch this transition. I just started yesterday for the first time watching Harry Potter, and I was like, wow, Harry Potter came out in 2001.
And you're just reading it now.
I just touched it. But when I was younger, I remember reading a lot of going to the library during lunch and reading a lot of Greek mythology. I was really big on Greek mythology, really big on Clash of the Titans. Read a lot of kind of, YA, young adult mysteries, Encyclopedia Brown, and I don't know, whatever I could get my hands on. Choose your own. I was really big into choose your own adventure for a while. So exactly, just one of those kids who had a vast imagination and was always looking for ways to keep it fed. But as writers learn, you just keep chowing and devouring until you, like one of my favorite poets, Nicole Blackman, said, when you start writing the things you most need to hear, and that's when you start creating your own verse.
Mm-hmm. So, I love that quote because it is it applies to so many things in your life. It's not just in the writing. It's when you start hearing and believing what it is that you are hearing and writing, that it broadens your horizons in so many different ways. So, okay, first poem that you're going to share with us today.
Listen, I'm going to do this digitally too, so we're going to be jumping back and forth.
Okay.
May all those present please remove your hearts before entering this bridal chamber. Slide them off like tormented slippers, silver, ruby, gold, glass, or otherwise. Shed them off like monstrous aboriginal masks, exposing eroding parietal art inscribed in winter, equinox, autumn, solstice, or otherwise. Behold them aloft. Like star-crossed sage, smoldering omen of Icarus, smudging amber-faced ecliptic moons, flamed out benediction of the phoenix ruined, albeit blessed to fall out of favor, heaven, empyrean, ether, or otherwise. Amen. Either way, amen. We would ask all those present, please remove your hearts. Snatch them back to the chronicles from whence they came. Bind them by the seat of their souls to the tear-stained precipice. Cast them deep into the folds of the earth to rot amongst the flesh of other stillborn demigods. Now somebody turn to your neighbor. Somebody turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, please remove your heart and open your mind if you would. Turn back to the book on broken promises, chapter 13, verse 8. Exhale when you have it. All hail when you have it. Exhale when you have it. All hail when you have it. Shall we begin? Shall we begin? See, that's for you. Shall we begin? Shall we begin with a tale of she? Mahogany siren of rose red hair, who carries the Palestinian touch. Genteel sting refreshes my memory like bumblebees and chrysanthemums. She is crouched in heroine position beneath the stone table, bow bent back and strung with the remaining locks of her own hair, the rest of which went to temple, the rest of which went overseas, the rest of which is being sold off Slauson right now at Cold War prices to women who are busy doing battle with the image of themselves in the mirror daily. But through the looking glass, she is Jemaya, face painted with soil and pomegranate, listening for the echoes of her epilogue in the sea, searching for the scent of salvation in the air, fading into visions of her crown in the surf, bleeding, bleeding, bleeding out into the shadows of the altar, aching arm outstretched for one last shot. Shall we begin with a tale of he, alchemist of earth, sand, and stone, of washed face and of rinsed mouth, who with the touch of his hand healed a splintered mermaid's fin, and lo, she was a butterfly, scaling skies in perfect pitch with her green-eyed son, who had also come to the palace in the desert, dragging the severed head of the purple unicorn in tow, a sacrifice to reality, a prelude to imagination's feast. We shall pick our teeth clean tonight, excavate golden calf meat from our molars, water the earth with our saliva and whiskey spittle. Please remove your hearts, sharpen your tears, and fashion a spear from the spine of the first dream that turned its back on you. Open your minds, if you would. Your unheralded superheroes teeter on a ledge 12 stories up, capes of fear rung as blindfolds over their eyes, ready to step out on a fate that has eluded them. Please remove your hearts and open your minds, if you would. Turn back to the book on promises. Turn back, I say, chapter 13, verse 8. Turn back to the book on lost children. Turn back, I say, chapter 6, verse 11. Turn back to the book on new beginnings. Turn back, I say, chapter 1, verse 1. Chapter 1, verse 1. Exhale when you have it. All hail when you have it. Exhale when you have it. All hail when you have it. Exhale when you have it. All hail when you have it. Shall we begin? Shall we begin? Shall we begin? In the beginning, 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 in the beginning was the word. Hello. Bright and shimmering it flowed forth from the estuary of your mouth at dawn. The day we met, I rolled up my pant legs just to talk to you. I wiped down the giddy footnotes of our conversation before attempting to drive home. And still, days later, sand in the socks of my everyday demeanor. I did not want to brush off what was left. Why or what for, when from then on out, my desire was simply to find my way back to sea. That's it.
You know, one of the things that just shot out at me so strongly is that it's in the voice of the poetry that all the dances, you know, you can read it and you have a feeling for what you've read, but it's in the hearing of it that I think is just so powerful and amazing. It was, you know, parts of it were almost pulpit preaching. You know?
That's true.
You know, and I see through that your love for myths and mystics and unicorns. Because you mentioned unicorns twice, I think, or maybe 3 times in this poem. Yeah. And it sort of goes back to your first 5-year-old poem. But I also see or heard a lot of your love for getting deep into the heart of your subject.
Yeah.
You know, and making sure that the person who is reading, and in this case, hearing what you have to say, that it just doesn't gloss over them, that it gets in deep.
It takes a lot of digging and security and insecurity. The original things that you mentioned are all true. I mean, in this particular poem, I think I rotate titles for this poem. At least, I think it may be on its fourth title right now.
What is that? What are those? What are the titles that you've gone through?
I think right
Because
now,
when you started and how you ended wasn't where I thought it was going.
yeah, which is why it's been difficult to settle on a title. The title right now is what was it? We'll get to the title in a minute. I think at one point that was just work in progress. But in the beginning, maybe was a title. We would ask all those present at one point in time was the title. So it jumped around to different lines in the particular poem. But I think the point that I was getting to was you identified it correctly. In this poem and so many different other poems, it's you can't get away from what's rooted deeply in you. And in this particular piece, I remember one of the things that I was going for was wanting to just really shake and destroy comfort and predictability, right? You think I'm going one way, I'm going another way. When you think I'm going this way, I'm going that way. You think I'm going up, I'm going down.
Detour.
Exactly. And one of the reasons why I needed this poem, right? Going back to what I said earlier, one of the reasons why I felt I needed this poem is because this poem makes me feel comfortable going wherever from here on out, whether it be a reading or a spoken word performance or anything like that. When I begin with something like this that touches on my history, my past, my young adult, my adult self, and it goes all over the place, it's really saying, you are not prepared. prepare yourself to be shook. It says, remove your hearts. If you came in here with some type of preordained or pre-assumptions towards what you're going to hear, these feelings attached to certain words and beings and images, I'm going to shake all that up. But at the same time, I'm going to settle in to that. So you're right. And you're right. That unicorn in there in my, what do they call it?
Your subconscious?
Maybe Godwink isn't the right term for it. Or maybe I think it's called an Easter Godwink or Easter egg or whatever you want to call it. But whenever I read that line, I definitely smile to myself, right? Because I know how far back, just the idea of a unicorn is rooted in my writing. So someone else may be latching on to the present image of, man, this guy's talking about purple unicorns and severed heads and blah, blah. And I'm like, man, I'm really smiling at myself in fifth grade and going on with that.
Yeah. So if there was one takeaway that you would want the reader or the listener to take away from that poem, what would it be? What one little nugget would you want them to take away?
Oh, that's a great question, because I'm not sure if the takeaway nugget is within the poem. The takeaway would be the courage to explore. If I have my timing correct, I think I wrote this poem after my second chapbook, South of Andromeda, my application for space. And that collection of writing was really meant to do what this piece is doing, saying, I want to do more, and I want to feel free to do more, and I want to talk about all things, and I want to experiment with my writing. So with this particular piece, if there's a nugget to take away from, anyone who hears it and smiles at it and identifies with the images, it's the legacy of writers who have poured into me the courage to go different places, you know what I'm saying? Because you are young doesn't mean you need to write about things associated with youth. Because you're Black doesn't have to be, associated with things that only people associate with Black people. I'm talking about everything. We're going to church. We're going to unicorns. We're talking about love. We're talking about, Palestine. We're going all over the place.
Yeah. you know, a lot of times I will ask artists and authors, and I don't know if I've asked a poet this, but I think the question is quite valid for you as well, is that you write something, you paint something, you sculpt something, and you get to a point where, is it enough? Have I gone too far? Have I not gone far enough? Do you find in the writing of this particular poem, any of those platforms apply?
Yeah, all those and then some. With this piece, I can never go far enough, right? Want this piece and so many others. You want to push, and at the same time, to me, your question is also rooted in drafting and editing, which is when you need to reel it in. And this poem has undergone several, drafts of reeling it in. When I say reeling it in, it's not necessarily your imagination or your drive to go further in experiences and combinations of language and colors and senses. What you reel in is the necessity for everything in there. It's a little confusing, but the phrase I'm looking for is economy of words, or economy of language, meaning even with poetry, that editing and drafting process, you want to bring it down to the words that are most impactful. So I'll throw it all in and then I'll go back and scale it down. And even now, it's quite a large and long poem that I continue to edit. But at the same time, I'm encouraged when I read the opening poem by June Jordan in the book Living Room. That poem goes on for like 6 pages. And I listen, I know June Jordan. She is my hero, my heroine, my priestess of poetry. But again, having that legacy of writers in front of me says, hey, draft, edit. But if you ever feel it needs to be that long, hey, ride with it.
Yeah, don't be intimidated by it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else do you want to share with us?
Oh man, we're floating along. There is a really and pull this up.
I love having this discussion because it really opens up so many avenues of understanding. And I hope it does for our viewing audience as well, that, poets and authors, they take their inspirations from a myriad of experiences. Some of them are personal experiences, some of them are experiences that they've heard other people have, and they share it in such a bold and enlightening, frightening, loving, scary way. All of that.
We'll talk about that. I'll share these, and then we'll talk about fear and courage when it comes to sharing things. This is a piece called a short piece called Circling Back. I hope you and everyone else who may be listening or watching is still in the mood of, their minds being out there, because we deal with that. Circling back. You, pale green light of beacon, halo circling faith's buoy adrift at hope's end, celestial chopsticks carefully laid cross ocean bowl of cosmic pho. I, hapless brown pelican, rogue flight circling back for napkins and twilight sauce, for stars fallen behind, for fish long gone, forsaken kisses rescued beneath horizon's lips. We, broken course elephants, swimming circles in ultraviolet sun surf, at play in merciless tides between earth and moon,
baiting destiny's treachery with a life worth living, all at a loss as to where we were, as to where we all belonged. That's that one. I'm gonna tie in another one. I'm gonna keep them going.
Mm-hmm.
There's another short piece called Fatigue de la Femme. Waited months to cut the anger from my diet, for fear I would starve at the thought of you. It was unhealthy. I was unsure how long I could last on a fast of love alone. Sometimes my heart gets so hungry. There's that one. Yeah, let me
That's
drop
a very vulnerable one.
Yeah, I'll
You know,
drop
that
one.
really opens up your whole spirit on that one.
I'll drop one more in there.
Okay.
It's called Parisian Rain Clouds, available for pre-order. How might I persuade you? How might I persuade you to remain open like cracks in brick walkways, gathering rainfall before bus stop overhangs, pink rubber booted and umbrellaed, an artful avoidance before le Musée de Luxembourg, late April hazard of memories to be hopscotched, tippy-toed, an arm outstretched for balance, the loss of bearings captured in a pas de chat avec plié, how weather graces the graceless, leaves us wet in remembrance of things we seek shelter from or run out into play with. How might I persuade you to remain open like that? That's it. We just having fun. We just having fun.
You know, all three of them, especially the first one, you know, you're channeling your animals and your celestial bodies again, you know, and then the other two are, as the second one I found to be very, very personal and open. This last one was kind of different. And I'm not 100% sure of what direction that one took me. So let's talk about that one.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Pull it back up again. Can you tell? Sometimes, again, poets and writers, you know, certain things are just buried in there. And just the title itself, Parisian Rain.
Yeah. Because that suggested something completely different
when it
than,
goes
than what the body of it was. So
yeah.
I am kind of off in space on that one. So
it's the available for pre-order that always gets me.
Yes.
So again, it's simple in the memory. It's a time where I traveled to Paris to visit with friends, to see the city, and also, to do my own personal Baldwin tour. As you mentioned in the bio, I am a self-proclaimed Baldwinite. So when I planned my trip to Paris, I had mapped out all the different cafes that James Baldwin was known to visit and write at. So that is what allowed me to see all the different parts of Paris, was just traveling in his footsteps where he had written. So as I'm doing this, impromptu tour of this gorgeous city, there's days where it rained out there. I'd planned it to go in
in April, courtesy of the song April in Paris.
April in Paris, yes.
Again, and you see how we are. You see how we are as writers and poets. Like we're so tied to art that we have to make that art something living. So when I planned my trip, I wanted it to happen just like the song April in Paris. So I had to go out in April. And when you go out in April, it rains.
Yeah. They didn't tell you that in the song, did they?
They didn't say it in the song. So here I am on Paris, in Paris, and it's raining, every other day, half the day. And that's, where it came from, just the idea of wanting to really enjoy life and enjoy the city, but realizing that it's raining outside. And how open are you to experiences like that, where in order to enjoy something that you've dreamed of, you have to deal with, you got to deal with a little bit of rain. You got to live with.
Then there's also the joy of being childlike and taking that experience of the rain under the umbrella, walking the Arc de Triomphe,
Well, you got
experiencing it in a different way. So it's being open enough to not just be boxed in to one concept.
You nailed it. I mean, and that's, I think I played with some words in there when I said pink rubber booted. Like, you can see a child in like the rubber rain boots and with the umbrellas and they're jumping in the puddles. All those things is what I'm referencing in there, in combination with the idea of, having a relationship with someone and wanting to be that open. How can I persuade you to be that open, to be somewhere and then go against it, but then realize that the rain is also something to be enjoyed, and we may lose our balance in the rain, but losing our balance is also part of the great memory. And even when you lose your balance, it can be artful. It can be like, ballet.
Exactly.
So that's what that poem's doing. Because I've given away too much.
But it in your explaining it, it reminded me of one of my bucket lists years ago, was being in the Caribbean, in the water and having it rain while I was in the water. And it never happened. And the very last day that we were in St. Martin, and we were packing up to go back to the hotel, and it started to drizzle. And then it rained, and I got all undressed again and jumped into the water so I could have that experience. And it was better than I expected it to be, because the rain was warm, the water was warm, the sun was, it was just, but it's having that expectation and having it fulfilled.
And I think that is the joyful challenge and calling of all artists, which is to take our experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the bloody, and the beautiful, and help others see the details of it, right? And what that experience means. I mean, again, we all deal with rain, but how each person sees that rain and how they can use that experience to be different. So I'm thankful that we just shared in the moment. See, so something, as far off as me doing Baldwin in Paris and what I got from it, trigger something in your brain, about, your experience, with the rain. I think that's the blessing of how poetry works along, which is it's not tied specifically to what I'm writing about. If it triggers something in you and you go to a different memory, then my poem has done its purpose. It's done its job. It's activated a joy in you related to your own personal experience, still, activated by my poem, but then you can go off and paint something or dance or create your own poem, and it goes on.
Yeah. Well,
I see you lost in your memory.
I am so glad that I asked that question, because I wasn't quite grasping that last poem. And so I appreciate the explanation, because as you said, it took me to a time that I experienced such joy in and it all came out of your explanation of this amazing poem. So, whew.
Well, even in that, I go, the feedback, and even prior to the feedback, I'll look at pieces like this, and they're still ripe for editing. And when I say ripe for editing, meaning they will remain the same. But if I see something and I go, it's not like surgery where you can't go back. I can,
Yes.
go back in there and tweak and scalp. And there's some things that I'm still moving around in there. But to a question that I think you leaned into, but didn't ask completely, I'll just go with it, which is, it has to do with editing, which is when you're done, how does a writer or a poet know when they're done with a piece? And for mine, I go to the cliche phrase, which is a poem's never finished, only abandoned. And sometimes I look at poems and they feel finished. And sometimes I'll have poems that have been, published, and I go, man, I feel like I abandoned that poem. Like I need to go back and finish it properly. So it's all how you feel personally.
Well, that brings me to two quick questions. One of them is, have you ever encountered having regrets for something that you have written, maybe published, and then you did it at a time when things were different in your life, and now you're reading it and experiencing it with new experiences, and you're thinking, oh man, I shouldn't have written that one, or what was I thinking? Or, or you're having second thoughts about it.
Gotcha. No.
Good.
No to the writing of it. Yes to the performance of it. I believe, that art is therapeutic, right? Not everything that goes in your diary or your journal deserves to be published. Not everything that goes in my journal or private conversations deserves, a place on stage. And when I say deserve, I'm speaking, specifically of myself, because the way that I process my writing and my art, it has a lot to do right now with healing. I don't write specifically saying this is healing, but it represents where I am in my life. So when I look back, I can definitely see poems, language, turns of phrase that I go, woof, it's kind of risque. But I go, for what I was going through, I'm glad I wrote it like that. And I'm glad that stayed in that journal. There's some others that I brought out and performed that it's just not, they just don't resonate the same, when some actually were a bit more performative than authentic. And that leans into another thing where sometimes too often in aggressive poetry or competitive poetry, slam poetry, or communities that have leaned into, one-upmanship, where you lose a bit of authenticity in what you're writing, and you look back and question, why did I write that? Was that because something I experienced or something I cared about, or was that really just trying to get a shock and awe from the audience? So again, from the things that I've written, I don't experience too much regret in that. I'm glad that, listen, I need to write more. It's to this day. But it's having that discernment in terms of what actually I submit for publishing and what deserves time on stage. Because as you grow in your experiences, you learn that time on stage for yourself is also time of someone else's life. And how are you using their time purposefully and with intent? Are they listening to you because you're just venting therapy that could very well be dealt with in a therapy session? Or are you venting something that you've gone through that can actually help someone who's navigating the same thing or finish healing from it at the end? That's a bit of an extended answer, but I feel that
but that's a really good answer, because it, what does regretting doesn't accomplish anything, if you learn from it and you realize that, oh, that was my 20-year-old person. Now I am 30 or I'm 40, or I'm 50,
Yeah.
you know, my experiences have broadened. My my use of language, as you said, everything else is different 10 years, 5 years later than it was before. Your environment is different,
Yeah.
not just your own personal experience, but how you react to the environment in which you are currently, and changes the tone and the direction of how we all write, live, perform.
And we all evolve. And I'm
Yeah.
smiling because I'm thinking of one poem in particular. I'm like, man, I'd never perform that again. But I'm still thankful that I wrote it, because I see the humor, I see the lightness, and I see the joy, you know, at the time of when I wrote it. But it's not appropriate for myself and not relevant, you know, to bring it out and perform it. So it stays in that time capsule.
Well, read the end of your 5-year-old poem again. Say it again, because you know, here it is. Yeah, do that again.
Read running.
The last line of your first 5-year-old poem about the unicorn.
Oh, where it says running.
Running.
Race the swan. Yeah, that's always relevant. Let's not get that. Let's not put that in that barrel. Always relevant.
but the experience that you had as a 5-year-old writing that still brings you joy where you are now.
Yeah, and it's the innocence, of it, and also the determination in the writer. I was very determined in fifth grade. I was actually fifth grade, so I was 10 at the time, but I was actually determined to be good at whatever it was that I was doing. And I share that to this day with young adults who are writing, just beginning writing, or have been writing for some time. I say, don't allow your youth and others' perception of your youth box you in. I want you to understand that the things you write now as a 12-year-old, as a 15-year-old, as a 19-year-old, that it still carries relevance, intent, and purpose to those who may need that particular message. I'm not too far gone as an adult, you know, more mature writer, to read something by, you know, again, I experience it all the time. One of my young adult writers maybe writes something, they're 16, and I go, good Lord, I've never heard someone talk about that the way you did. And I never would have unless you at 16 shared your personal experience and story. So there's value and purpose at every stage in life, and nothing to be regretted and looked back upon and going, oh, that's, you know, it's too kiddie. Well, some things are corny, but nothing's too kiddie. The corny things you can leave. The kiddie things, I let them out. Yeah.
And that makes me think about one of the programs that you and I did at the start of the pandemic, I think, with some of your teen writers, and some of in fact, all of the poems that they shared were they were powerful. And I found that kept thinking to myself, this is a 15-year-old writing this with such a voice. It was mind-blowing.
Yeah,
they were just amazing.
They bring me out. And when I say bring me out, meaning they're a constant source of encouragement, of that desire to do more, and that imagination that's consistently devouring. So if I'm ever experiencing writer's block, or just recognizing that I'm not writing as much, I try to stay active in terms of, you know, supporting young adult writers in their journey, because at some point in time I go, you know what, let me keep going, because they're catching up. I was like, I want them to go far, and I want them to, but I was like, they are catching up. Lets me know I need to go.
They're pacing you.
Yeah.
So you said that you don't feel that you are writing enough. So what's your writing process like? Do you write every day, or is it, you know? Are you in your journal making notes every now and, what does that look like?
Okay, here we go. The on and off the record. So at this point, I could probably deal with a bit more discipline in terms of my writing. There's a couple different exercises I've done from time to time to just keep the pen moving. One that I really enjoyed, and if I ever find I need to do more writing, I'll fall back to 2 lines a day, right? Not overwhelming yourself, but if you can jot down 2 hot lines, and I love that idea. It's just 2 hot lines. An idea that came if you see a leaf fall or something. If you could just write 2 lines about the leaf falling, you'll have that feeling of, oh, okay, I've written something, and just flow with it. Because when it comes to inspiration, it's just that quick, right? You just need to capture a moment. You need to write it down or record it in your voice and move on with that. So the 2 hot lines is a process that keeps me going. Journaling a little bit. Again, I'll get a week and a half into it and then slow down with that. But when I'm trying to think of the last, music is a great source of inspiration and writing. And it's taking the ideas, images, and feelings and then transitioning into another art form that's literary. So bridging inspiration and my writing process. When I feel I need to write more, my writing process is tied to how I'm manipulating inspiration to get it going again.
Okay, got it. Well, I think we have time for one more, and then maybe a little bit of Q&A based on that. So what else do you have for us? I know you have lots. So
no, you know what? As you were saying, I was like, man, I popped those last 3 off. I was like, where do I want to go? Maybe I should close out with something. No. Here. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. I don't know why.
You're in the driver's seat.
Give me 1 second. I don't know why it's not coming up for me. Hold, please. Oh, not that one.
While you're doing that, I would just let our viewers know that your website is www.marcusomari.com. And if they want to purchase any of your books and find out more about you, where you're performing, and anything else about you, they can go to your website. It will also be posted on the Museo's website.
You're right. All right. So of all the different channels, we'll go forward to go back. This one's called Smells of Church. Burnt sugar brown skeleton baby ain't been feeling mighty fine lately. Sojourner shell, tumbling snowy angels, and socialized to detest white sheets. Diabetes amputee, made so she stay kneeling and in need of prayer. Smile smells of church. Hope she didn't bring none with her. Hair half blown, dandelion thin, fingerprints already preaching at my cheeks. Auntie feels like she underside of rose petals be, hugging tighter to me than wetness to water on Mississippi morning magnolia buds. Always asking for some sugar, like my neck sopped in sweet communion wine. One good eye, the other a flaming onyx moon hung by a blue noonday delta sunset, exposes shadowy glimpses of my future failure and fruition. Breaks cycloptic devotion to tell me about what her and Medgar was planning to do, about how many buckets it took to scrub them puddled plans off the driveway, about how hands saturated in crimson crystal bubbles can coax the lost crystalline metaphor of Langston's dreams deferred to rise from cool concrete slabs. Curiously tickled in the ache of memory, she be giggling up tar
coughing ghouls of addiction. Eyes closed shut, heard her hums a little something her daddy had hummed when southern storm shook her and bruh and sis out of bed, all her might gingerly grasping my younger, softer, black hand that ain't never picked a bowl of cotton, but can work the hell out of some Call of Duty. Grasping, seeing both our veins pulse, her eyes closed shut, smiling, when she saw herself walk out Cherry Grove Baptist doors for the last time. A tall, lean, dark step down that yellow brick sanctuary. Her arm eased on down, her grip rested, and church let out. I could smell it. That's that one.
Yeah, wow. You've mentioned James Baldwin and a couple of other inspirations. Are there any others that really come to mind, that your favorite poets? Maybe one, and why?
Woo! Okay. You know, that's the challenge. Can't do one and why, but I'm gonna have fun with this, because I'm gonna shout out, you know, I'm gonna answer that question and shout out poets that I feel like could be need to be helped and held up. Influences. Patricia Smith. Oh my God. Poetry of Patricia Smith, right? Opened so many doors in terms of her writing. Another great influence. Patricia's just out of Chicago, but I don't know where she is right now. She all over. Writer named Willie Perdomo, out of New York. Willie Perdomo. So and I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna move on and watch that. So Patricia Smith, from Patricia Smith. Patricia's the person who taught me page and stage. That what you can write can also be effective on stage, and what you do on stage should be at a place where it can be published and understood as well. And I love that. So that's Patricia Smith. Willie Perdomo, man, Willie's writing taught me to relax, and just tell the story and share your story and edit a little bit. But, you know, the simplicity of our experiences, you know, resonates enough. It doesn't need a whole lot of sauce on it. That's what I get when I read Willie Perdomo's writing. There is a classic poet by the name of Walter Benton, a la the movie Cooley High. And Walter Benton is the writer who challenged me most to reach for the most powerful and egregious metaphor, just over the top, right? It's just over the top. I remember it may not be as bold today, but I remember reading a line of his that said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably butchering it. He said, "I'd feel more comfortable walking through the gates of heaven holding your hand than when Jesus himself." And I said, that is so blasphemous, but so good. I said, that is really loving a woman right there. And he said something like, you know, her smile is, you know, bright like a match struck across a cathedral ceiling. Just all these images just challenged me. My favorite author, his name is Paul Beatty. And Paul Beatty was one of the first poetry slam champions out of San Francisco. And Paul has written 2 amazing and funny books of poetry. And Paul taught me that you can be funny in poetry, right? That it can be based on humor. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be heavy. As young Black people, we can just talk about our joys and let that be our story. And I love that. And his books, if you haven't read any Paul Beatty and you want to be challenged, man, look into some of his books. The White Boy Shuffle, Tough, and The Sellout, incredible. And that's me. And June Jordan, oh my God, the goddess June Jordan. And I talked a little bit about what she did.
June Jordan taught me combining the two. What I loved about June Jordan is that she could take a love poem and a war poem and it be the same. And in that, you're thinking, are we talking about love in a relationship, or are we talking about war? Or are we talking about war, or are we talking about love? And she blended them so well that it helped me understand that that's how you can extend a metaphor. You can take, a kiss of a loved one and then all of a sudden be off talking about, the suffering in areas of Africa or something, and then bring that all the way back and then tie that to the experiences. And then the last one,
that was like your first poem that you read.
That's you enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
the last one I'll mention, going back to one of the first questions you asked, Nikki Giovanni. Nikki Giovanni for me is
I love her. Yeah.
Nikki Giovanni for me is ground zero. She wrote the book Gemini, the autobiography of my first 25 years of being a Black poet. And once I had read that book, I knew that I'd be doing this a very, very long time.
I love Nikki Giovanni.
Once, and again, talks about where you are in life. At 28, she wrote an autobiography of her first 25 years. And if someone just at 25 has had enough experiences to last a lifetime, it gave me confidence in my worth at a young age to start writing. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Marcus, this has just been a wonderful, and the hour has gone by so fast. I can't even believe that it's an hour already. And I just want to thank you for taking your time and sharing your thoughts and your voice for this hour.
I want to thank you, right? Champion you and all the programming that you've done. I want to thank the Museum and Cultural Center. I also want to shout out Natalie, who could not be here.
Yes.
But also, it's her vision that allowed me to kind of step in and hold space for her today. So
Yes.
wherever you are, sending you blessings and the best wishes.
Yes. And in fact, I was going to do the same thing, because she has brought such a poetic voice, a collective, to this program that when she was unable to be here today, it was again through the connection with Natalie that we were able to, I was able to call you and say, hey, Marcus, help.
Yeah, so, Natalie did, and going all the way back to Grant as well. I don't know.
And Grant Heyer,
the
inaugural Poet Laureate for the city of Anaheim. And that whole collaborative has been so wonderful. We would invite you, the audience, to let us know how you enjoy these programs. We want to continue to give relevant programs to the community. So we welcome your input and your support of the Museo. Special thank you to Vanessa with her work behind the scenes. And thank you so much to our viewing audience for tuning in on a Sunday afternoon when you could be doing so many other things. Join us on April the 10th when we present the Open Book Author Series. The Museo's main gallery is open to the public, as is the Carnegie, from Wednesday to Sunday, 11 to 5. In the main gallery is Dialogues with the Sacred, the work of Hyun Kang. And in the Carnegie galleries, the exquisite glass work of Joan Flax, the digital NFT art of Crypto Painter, and the youth and adult art from the Orange County Heritage Council. So until next time, April 10th, thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.